Black Americans have a culture that's influenced every single corner of this globe, musically, in fashion, in art, in cuisine, hairstyles. I mean, we can go on and on and on. I mean, honestly, global culture wouldn't be what it is today without Black Americans. That's the extent of their influence.
I don't be stop. The way you shake it is your back. It do me does. Now you just got my baby. I don't be stop. I don't be shaking it. Ding, ding, ding. Oh baby, so free. Make you no give me better.
What's up, everybody? Welcome to another episode of yours truly, Black Coffee. Again, before we begin today, please like, share, subscribe, as well as comment on our content as we continue the ball rolling on season 2 of yours truly, Black Coffee. Ooh, you saw my band-aid. I was trying to hide that, but we ain't hiding nothing today because we have a lot on the burner for discussion. Let's start with Juneteenth, Jane. This Monday, we finally got our federal holiday, June 19th, which commemorates the emancipation of Black Americans from slavery. And just to give a brief history, Union General Gordon Granger ordered a proclamation to free slaves on June 19th, 1865, 2 months after the Civil War ended. Can you believe that? Well, no, we could believe it.
Yeah.
Slaves didn't even know that they were free. And so this holiday became a federal holiday in 2021. Jane, what are you doing for Juneteenth? You doing anything special?
Yeah, actually, I will be in I'm in Los Angeles right now. Well, soon to be in Los Angeles. I'm going to do a 5K run in Crenshaw. It's a Juneteenth 5K run. So
Wow,
I'm
that's
excited
amazing.
at. Yeah.
Wow, the Queen of Crenshaw is going back home. She's going back to her kingdom
Yes.
down in Florence. Well, good luck
I tell my
on.
Get
Oh
my
yeah,
ass.
yeah, I forgot. Yeah, like I said, they're gonna be looking for the palace down there. Um,
Beautiful, man.
actually, that's really cool, Jane. That's really cool. I'm actually thinking about doing going to a Juneteenth celebration in the Bay Area.
Hey.
So yeah, we'll see how it goes. As long as the food is good,
As
we're
always.
wearing our colors, to really show up and show out. Um, I wanted to ask you, what do you think about the Juneteenth promotion banners in South Carolina? You remember a few weeks ago that were featuring other races of people, other
Yeah.
ethnicities in black and white photos. And there are a lot of members of that community who voiced their concerns. And I'm curious, what's your take on this?
I thought that was a joke. For some reason, I thought it was like an SNL joke for some reason. I don't know. I feel like that's something they would do, but it was real. Some people say some people say they didn't see nothing wrong with it. I see a lot of things wrong with it because a lot of people take Juneteenth as a joke, or they're just seeing it as a way to make, I won't say quote unquote, make black people like say, at least we gave you something, so shut up. So no, this is for us, especially Black Americans. This is for them. This is for them to celebrate, be one, let their voices be heard. Their voices should be amplified, even 10 times louder. So I think it's a slap in the face when you see people who's not from the community being shown on banners.
That's a good point. You hit it on the nail, Jane. A lot of times, Black American culture, holidays, really isn't respected the way how it should be. Not saying that other groups of people, other ethnicities and races of people, not saying that they can't help celebrate, but to put them on banners when Juneteenth is a day to celebrate the emancipation of Black Americans from slavery. That was almost like our independence, our independence from slavery. Because, I mean, America has what? July 4th, 1776 as the day for independence, but black folks were still enslaved.
Mm-hmm.
So to have other people on banners on a very important and sacred day, I think it's a slap in the face. Um, and Jane, I'm curious because you mentioned Black Americans, and this is a day for them to lift their history up.
Mm-hmm.
What do you think about other Black groups of people celebrating Juneteenth? Because we've had these discussions before.
We did.
Hmm.
I don't see nothing wrong celebrating. I think the problem I see if I see them having their voice being amplified, it's not about you right now. It's not for you. Be there, uplift our brothers and sisters whose voices were stripped, their culture was stripped, and this is their moment to shine. Let their moment to celebrate their ancestors. Let them see shine and joy for once.
Hmm.
That's how I see it.
I agree. And actually, I wanted to highlight this book. Ooh, my mic is about to fall over. The 1619 Project. I lost the cover. No, I didn't lose it. I think I might have spilled something on it and then it just became messed up. But if y'all haven't checked out this book, this is a great time to buy it, purchase it, whether you want to get the physical copy, the electronic copy. Um, this book by Nicole Hannah-Jones and several, I think, New York Times writers, it dives into the beginning of American slavery and aims to really, put the focus on America's history from the focal point of Black people and the consequences of slavery and how Black people contributed to this country beginning in 1619. So, I highly recommend it. It's a very good read. I think there's also a series on Netflix or Hulu, one of them. I'll put it in the description for this episode, that y'all should check out, regarding the 1619 project. But since we are on the topic of Black Americans, the term African American, Jane. So when you hear this term, I'm curious, what does it mean to you? There's a lot that we can draw from this. And the reason why I'm asking is because I feel like in recent years, the term African American is not the preferred, or a lot of people don't prefer it to identify Black Americans.
Mm-hmm.
And then also, people tend to lump every single group of Black people in this country, no matter where their ethnicity or nationality comes from, as African American. So when you hear this term, what does it mean to you? How would you define it?
I would say for me, I would say African American. How I think of it is more of your immigrant parents came here and gave birth to their kids, and they consider African American. Then on the other hand, I can see how people say, "Oh, I'm not African American because my ancestors were moved multi generations to the point that we had built our own culture here, our own lingo, our own music, our own style. So I don't consider myself attached to Africa. I'm Black."
Mm.
So that's how I differentiate the two.
I mean, that's a good hit at it. When I think, because a lot of people ask, okay, where does the term African American come from? Who created this term? And honestly, Jesse Jackson, the famous civil rights leader, he's typically coined as like the individual who really put this term into common usage back in the 80s to define Black Americans as a cultural group. Because we know that before then, Black Americans were either called Negro, colored, the other N word that we know of. And so the term has changed over time to identify Black Americans. And I think African American became more of like a
Like a
proper,
universal way to put
right, the
everybody.
universal proper term to identify Black Americans in this country. But then again, I can see where people have issues with that term. And the reason why I say that is because now when Jesse Jackson, and mind you, even though people give Jesse Jackson the credit for coining this term, you actually, I mean, this term was first used, I think, back in, you could see it in writings as early as the 1780s, early 1800s, variations of Afro-American, African-American. So it wasn't just, the past 40 years we've been using this term. But at least in the definition sense, it referred to American blacks, right, who descended from enslaved Africans taken from West Africa, Central Africa, those who built this country beginning in the 1600s. However, because it seems like in America, we love to group every black person together, this term has just been used for anybody who's black. Like, for instance, Barack Obama. He's the first African American president. And at least according to the general acceptance of the definition, he's not African American in that sense. For one, he's biracial, but two, his father is Kenyan or was Kenyan. So really, he would be the first president of African descent, yes, and maybe Kenyan descent. But in that sense, he's not Black American. His wife is, Michelle, very much so, is Black American because she's a descendant of enslaved individuals. So I think, as you can see, like, this term creates so much confusion for a lot of people. And like you mentioned earlier, Jane, Black Americans they're the root of this country. They have a distinct culture, a distinct language, a distinct ethnicity, music, cuisine that makes them just like any other distinct cultural group. And I think people need to respect that nowadays.
I agree 100%. I agree. And I feel like, I know that some Africans be like, well, you are African. Why are you trying to distance yourself from us? And I will always rebuttal, was like, but aren't y'all the same people who also make fun of them when they're trying to reach out to connect to their roots? To the point they say, okay, F it. I'm going to just stick to what I know, which is being Black and being proud, being with my language, my music, and y'all can continue to copy us. But don't come over here when it's convenient for you.
Ooh, Jane,
hey, it's the truth. I'm sorry, it's the truth.
You trying to start an ADOS versus
it's not an ADOS thing, but I can it's not me starting up. I can see the frustration, I hear the frustration, and I get it. When people are trying to reach out and connect to their roots, then people on the continent or people who are closer to the continent, like foreign parents who came here and migrated and all that, they're trying to reach out. You make fun of them. Look at them, y'all wearing this. You don't know what it's about. You joking on them, but they constantly trying to learn or trying to reach out, but you bashing it to the point they're like, man, F it. Don't come over here when it's convenient for you because we cool now. For everybody, we're cool now. Everyone wants to dance like us. Everyone want to talk like us. Yeah, so the truth hurts.
You better have the Africans in the comments.
Hey, I'm African. I can tell the truth. It's the truth, though. I hear it.
No, honestly, I'll put it like this. As someone who is both, my mother being Black American, my father being, from the continent, I can see where I can see both sides of the issue. What's interesting is I feel like it's the Africans who come here, not all, but a good number of the Africans who come here, a lot of times they do make disparaging comments about Black Americans, not knowing the trauma and the history that they've gone through. Not saying that Africans didn't go through their own trauma on the continent through colonization, but, they'll ask, why they dress this way, or why they talk this way, or They don't have no culture, and
Mm-hmm.
like no, Black Americans have a culture that's influenced every single corner of this globe, musically, in fashion, in art, in cuisine, hairstyles. I mean, we can go on and on and on. I mean, honestly, global culture wouldn't be what it is today without Black Americans. That's the extent of their influence. I feel like, yeah, it's more of the Africans who have immigrated here. Because honestly, I think, because at least from what I've seen,
Mm-hmm.
the Africans on the continent who have not been here, who don't get involved in these conversations, when a Black American goes back to the continent, they're proud to accept, them and to teach them about the culture and
Mm-hmm.
about their African heritage and so on. And so I don't want people to think that, oh, Africans, because I hear this a lot, oh,
Mm-hmm.
Africans don't like Black Americans, you know,
Well, it's not
when
true. But
it's
there are
not true.
some that make
There are some,
who
right? Because
group everybody together because that one experience with that person.
mhm, right, because let's be honest, there's a lot of there's a good number of Africans who do say nasty comments. But again, vice versa, there's also Black Americans who have made nasty comments about
Mm-hmm.
Africans. And honestly, we can't put the blame on either group because it's the media. And I know everybody says, oh, it's the media, but really, it's the
It
media
is.
that has perpetuated this because, again, Black Americans, for as long as media has been around in our society, they've seen, images of Africa that painted the continent in a bad light. That's why there are people, not just Black Americans, but I think that just the world in general, their ideology of Africa is, oh, they sleep in trees and the
Mm-hmm.
the child on with the belly flying. I mean, with the big belly and the fly around his nose and 69 cents a day you can feed this child and so on. Thinking that's what the entirety. I mean, let's be honest. You saw
Yeah.
those commercials on Sunday morning,
Not
uh,
Sunday morning.
before Sunday's Best and on BET, and we're gonna talk about BET later. Uh, but this was the image that was painted of
Mhm.
Africans for decades. And so in comedy, in movies, in TV shows, jokes were made about Africans for a very long time. It wasn't until maybe, the past few years that people have been opening their eyes and the media is now, well, I won't say the media, but really people
People doing
through
their own
social media,
research. Mm-hmm.
right, on social media, doing their research, actually traveling to the continent, enjoying African music and culture and starting to see, wow, Africa's not what they painted it out to be for decades, and vice versa. You're starting to see more Africans um, learning about the history and the generational trauma that Black Americans have gone through in this country for over 400 years. And so, yeah, I don't think, this division really, we know where it stems from. We know where it stems from, Jane.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. You don't even have to say it. We all know.
I want you to say it.
Nah, I plead the fifth.
No, no, no. You ain't gonna plead the fifth. I want you to say it. I want you to say
It's white supremacy.
colonizers.
Once
Mhm.
once if you divide, if you have make division in group, and they say the scariest group of people is black people who are united. Just
Mm.
imagine what we could accomplish.
Seriously, seriously, because I mean, if we united Black Americans in America, Blacks in the Caribbean, Blacks in
Mm-hmm.
Africa, the force that could be reckoned with. Because honestly, as much as we love to separate ourselves, oh well, I ain't African and I'm not American, I'm not this. And that.
Mm-hmm.
We actually have more similarities than there are differences. We all come from the same root. It's just because of centuries of separation we've developed into our separate ethnicities and cultural practices. But honestly, if we united, I mean, we're starting to see it in the musical, I mean, in music and arts. I mean, when
Mm-hmm.
Black Americans collaborate with African artists, I mean, come on, we're hearing some of the best music we've heard in years in this point in time. So before we do before we move on, I do want to ask, because now this is just playing devil's advocate. I don't want y'all to say this is what I'm saying or this is what Jane is saying. But do you feel like certain people who don't like the term African American, let's say Black Americans who don't like being called African, do you also think that it could be tied to self-hate and distancing themselves from Africa?
Ooh, child. I would say yes and no at the same time.
Okay.
Hear me out.
So why yes? Why yes?
I say yes because just look how people show Africa in the media and how people talk about Africa. And most people don't find that, I don't want to say find that trending. For example, when people say, oh, your language is sexy, it's always Spanish, Italian, French. You would never catch someone say, hey, that African accent is hot. You know, it does something to my ear.
Wait, I mean, aren't 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 Nigerians in right now? Aren't Ghanaians in right now?
It's true. I'm just let me just give a point out. Let me just give a point out. I'm just
Go
saying,
ahead,
like
go ahead.
when you hear people say stuff like exotic and stuff, you will never hear like the content of Africa, the language being grouped into something beautiful.
Right. We think of like French. We think
Yeah.
of people from the Middle East
So they were
and
like, I don't want that.
Arabic and
And
yeah.
then when you look at like the people, and usually the media predict the people in not in a good light, and people like, I don't want to be associated with that. And now we have the whole colorism. I know it's a lot with colors, but the colorism example, they're like, I ain't no dark skin. You see them with the yellow eyes. They ain't me. They ain't my people. So they want to distance themselves from that. Then the other, that's why I see that as self-hate. The other one, I could see that they were like, no, I'm Black because I have my own roots here. My generation been so removed to the point that we can't even trace it back. And I have my own history here, and I want to keep to that. So I can't be mad at someone say I don't want to be associated with that language or that being labeled me that.
Culture or image.
Yeah.
Ooh, Jane, you preaching tonight. You preaching tonight. You know, I want to respond to, because you mentioned, you know, all these dark-skinned people and the yellow eyes and so on. And for some reason, people have this idea that all Africans look the same. And that's not true. Africa is a continent that can fit China, Russia, half of Europe, the United States, and probably India, all on that one continent alone. I mean, take Nigeria, for example. Nigeria has over 200 ethnic groups who speak different languages, have different beliefs, and in some cases look different from one another. You know, Africa is the most biologically diverse continent on this planet. And so, for one, not everybody looks the one image that's presented, you know, of the extremely dark-skinned person. And even for the extremely dark-skinned people on the continent, they're beautiful. But we've been taught that, oh, being that Black is bad. And I hear some, you know, some Black Americans, again, this is not all, but I've heard it even from my family, say, oh, we different because, you know, we light, or we brown, we not as dark as them. And so we're not the same. And honestly, the reason why, well, for one, Black people come in all colors, Africans come in all colors, but a lot of times the reason why Black Americans, some are very light, is because African Americans or Black Americans, however you want to identify, they are a mixed racial group. You know, because a lot of times, because of what happened during slavery, relations that weren't always consensual between the master and female slaves produced a mixed racial group. I mean, Black Americans generally are what, between 70 and 85, 90% African, but sometimes can carry as much as 30, 40% of European DNA. Also some Native American DNA thrown in because again, your ancestors have been around other groups of people for 400 years. So of course, you're not going to look exactly the same as the original people on the continent. But honestly, you still carry a lot of their DNA. We're not as far removed DNA wise as we think we are. And so when I hear things like that, it's out of ignorance. And a lot of times I don't blame them because this is not taught. This is not talked about. And this is why we are on this podcast. We are here to open up these difficult conversations. I've heard, again, the same people who don't want to be called African are the same people who are very proud of their great, 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 great grandmother who was Cherokee Indian, who they can't state her name. They probably got 0.03% of her DNA, but they're so proud of that. They're so proud. And I'm not saying you can't be proud of your ancestry, but if you're proud of your Indian ancestry or your native ancestry, your Irish ancestry, your Chinese great great grandmama, well, why can't you also be proud of your African ancestors who endured the voyage to what we now call America, who were raped, who were beaten, who worked for free for the rest of their lives? This wasn't, oh, my choice to come to America. It was, we were stolen and you're going to work here until the day you die. Mm-hmm. That's the difference between Black American ancestors and other migrant or immigrant groups. Black Americans' ancestors didn't choose to come here. So I know that's going deep into it, and we'll probably have more conversations on this topic, but I did want to lift it up as we celebrate Juneteenth, a Black American, well, a holiday commemorating Black Americans and the ending of slavery. And I just wanted to see your thoughts on that. Do you have anything else that you wanna add?
I'll just say, as we celebrate, and be safe. Keep your loved ones in mind, and just enjoy the day.
Mm-hmm. And yeah, I think last I'll say is, I think we as a society, because I always go on the deep end, mm-hmm. But we as a society, please, let's start respecting Black Americans as a distinct ethnic group, just like how we respect Nigerians as an ethnic group, Jamaicans as an ethnic group, where or just even besides non-Black ethnic groups, Irish, Italians, and so on. Black Americans are an ethnic group, and they need to stop being lumped with everybody. I mean, yes, they are of African descent, but they have a specific history, like how we're celebrating today. Doesn't take away from their African heritage. And Black Americans' ancestors were here in many cases longer than a lot of other ethnic groups, including some white ones. I know that's a lot. Another. I might cut that part out because I know people are gonna.
Yeah.
That's all that we have for y'all today. We hope that y'all enjoyed this episode. Again, please like, share, subscribe, as well as comment on our content. Please,
like you begging.
And I'm begging, please. And critique us. Let us know how we're doing. And what topics would y'all like to hear for the summer? Because again, we coming hard this summer, y'all. We want to really bring you some enlightening content. So again, Jane, you can lead out.
Health is wealth. Don't be surprised with your own people. Dream
Don't be
big.
surprised, y'all.
And this is BlaqKoffee.
This is BlaqKoffee. We love you, and we'll see you next time.
Bye, everyone.
Oh, baby,